Tannama Rupa Charitadi Sukirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasana Manasi Niyojya Tishtan Vrajeta Danuragi Jananugami Kalam Nayedhakilam Iti Upadeshasaram. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So, Tan Nama means the lords of Lord Krishna. So name, Rupa is form, Charita is character or pastimes. So all of these, Krishna's name, form, and pastimes, Sukirtananu. Kirtan is discussing or chanting, but Sukirtan is chanting nicely, like complete and nicely auspicious in so many ways. Here it is now, Prabhupada translates as nicely. So in discussing, one should discuss or chant the names, forms, and pastimes of Krishna. Okay, and then what we should do if he actually speaks or hears, and then the next is smrityoho. He also should remember hearing, chanting, and then remembering. So the third stage, remembering, also should happen. Smrityo kramena, gradually it will happen. First one starts with hearing and then chanting, and gradually one also starts remembering. Rasana, one starts with external, one starts with tongue. Rasana is tongue. So one starts with vibrating with the tongue first, and then the manasi niyoja, then the mind also will be engaged in it. Initially the mind may not be engaged in it, but gradually, kramena, the mind will also get engaged in chanting the name, form, and pastimes of Krishna nicely. So at that time, when the mind also starts chanting very nicely, Tishtan, at that time, reside. Tishtan is actually residing in Vraje, where we have to reside in Vraja, that is in Vrindavan or Vraja Mandal. Tad Anuragi Jananugami means we have to reside in Vrindavan, taking shelter of those personalities who are actually followers of, who are actually dear devotees of Krishna. Following in their footsteps, we have to reside in Vrindavan. Tishtan Vraje, Tad Anuragi. Tad Anuragi is those people who are very attached to Krishna. So, under the shelter of those personalities, Anugami, following in their footsteps, we have to reside in Vraja. And what we should do while residing in Vraja? Kalam Nayed Akhilam Iti Upadeshasaram. Kalam is time. Nayed is like utilize, fully utilize. Akhilam is fully. So fully utilize one's time in what? Chanting, hearing, and remembering the pastimes of Krishna. And this is the essence of all advice. Iti Upadeshasaram. This is the essence of all advice that Srila Rupa Goswami is giving. See, the essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering Lord Krishna's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's mind, one's tongue, and mind. So in this way, one should reside in Vraja and serve under Krishna, under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So there are things that we need to unpack in the course of discussing the purport. We'll do that. So Srila Prabhupada is beginning the purport of verse 8 with the concept like why to training, about the training the mind. So he explains why to train the mind, because Prabhupada says the mind can either be one's enemy or one's friend. So one has to train the mind to become his friend. If we won't train, it can become an enemy. So it's better to train the mind to become one's friend. So, and then Prabhupada says the Krishna conscious movement, note the word especially meant. Krishna conscious movement is meant for many things. in this context, in this verse, Prabhupada is saying the Krishna conscious movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The Krishna conscious movement is meant for many things, but the one of the most here in the context of this verse is especially meant for training the mind, because chanting is also actually training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. So when one trains like that, the mind becomes a friend gradually. So the functions of the uncontrolled mind could be dangerous. So how dangerous? That it can actually put us in a inauspicious position in the next birth. That dangerous it is, that it will not only give us a next birth, but also give us a inauspicious position in the next birth. So that is why it is extremely important to control the mind or to train the mind to say. So because what we remember at the time of death determines our next body. So therefore Srila Rupa Goswami in this particular verse advises us to train the mind so that it cannot think anything other than Krishna. So it naturally thinks of Krishna. So at the time of death, if we train it like throughout the life like this, at the time of death, naturally there is all the chance that the mind will remember Krishna naturally. And also the question might come up, in spite of practicing all these things, how do I know I'll be able to remember Krishna at the time of death? I spent 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and while dying, if I don't remember Krishna, if I die unconsciously, if I die in an accident, I think of something very stupid at the last moment, I am very fearful. Will Krishna not give the benefit of practicing devotional service for all my life? So that question can come up. So in response, the same question was asked to Ramanujacharya by his disciples. Ramanujacharya quoted a verse from Varaha Puran. I don't have the verse right on of my memory now, but the verse says that how one has to engage in devotional service during his lifetime sincerely. At the time of death, yadi vatadi doshena means if due to the problems of body, if a devotee is unable to take shelter of Krishna, Krishna will remember the devotee. Devotee does not need to remember. But we need to get qualified. We need to show our sincerity while living, so that when we die, whatever is our position, Krishna will remember us. What is our power of remembering him? If Krishna remembers us, that is even much better. So for that, we need to practice while living. So that is why he says, train our mind so that we can but think of Krishna always while living, so that while dying, it becomes very natural. He says, mind, training it is a big deal. But before training the mind, one need to train one's tongue in terms of speaking only about Krishna. That means not speaking anything unrelated to Krishna, and to taste only Krishna Prasad. When we actually train our minds in this way, train our tongue in this way, and gradually mind also gets trained, and we will be able to advance in devotional service. So this is Srila Prabhupada's. So for what we saw is the introduction to the purport by Srila Prabhupada about the importance of training mind. So now about the same training in the mind, how we train the mind, like Srila Rupa Goswami writes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I just wanted to refer it here. So in terms of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti perspective, so one needs to give up all material motives and desires, engage in regulative devotional service according to the directions of the scriptures. Vaidhi means, it comes from the word Vidhi. Vidhi means rules. So rules are given where in the scriptures. So when our bhakti is based on the rules given in the scriptures, it becomes Vaidhi. Vidhi, and from because it is based on Vidhi, it becomes Vaidhi. Sadhana is we are training ourselves. We haven't perfected. So sadhana is training phase. So Vaidhi sadhana bhakti perspective. Okay, how do we train our mind from the perspective of a Vaidhi sadhaka? We are all Vaidhi sadhakas trying to practice, at least myself, I can say. Give up all material motives and desires. Engage in regulative devotion service according to the directions of scripture. Follow the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting, remembering Krishna, etc. So there is regulative principles like the four regulative principles that we follow. In general, in ISKCON, when we say regulative principle, we refer to those four. However, the regulative principles also can be chanting and remembering like that. So the vows that we take. Then when one has developed true taste and attachment, he can try to live in Vrindavan and spontaneously serve Krishna's lotus feet. That is, take to the path of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So, when can we transition from Vaidhi to Raganuga Sadhana? Because in the translation, they both seemed like they are like kind of mixing up a little bit. So, that's why here there is a clear understanding. One part of the verse was speaking about Vaidhi Sadhana. That's what we saw in verse 6, verse 7, until verse 7. That's what we saw. Like verse 7 said, every day with respect, take the holy names. So but when one does that, when one does with kintvadarad anudinam khalu saiva jushta, kintvadarad, with respect, every day anudinam khalu saiva jushta, he takes up, even though he does not have a taste because he has jaundice of ignorance, he is not able to taste, one is unable to taste the sweetness of Krishna's name qualities, still he continues to chant like kintvadara danudinam khalu saiva jushtai. When he continues to do that, then the ignorance is reduced, then true taste and attachment appears. When the taste appears, then he can actually try to live in Vrindavan and spontaneously serve Krishna's lotus feet. Until then, what does he do? He continues to practice to come to this stage of taste and attachment. So if we haven't seen in this course about the 9 stages of bhakti, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti. So this particular last point is speaking about taste and attachment, that is Ruchi and Asakti. So when a person comes to the stage of Ruchi and Asakti, only then the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakta can transition to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Before that, if he tries, it will not be helpful and it will not be healthy also for his spiritual life. For it can actually bewilder him or it can take him down a different road. So the in the Amnaya Sutra, Bhakti Vinod Thakur writes, Asakti Paryante Sadhana means until the end of Asakti, it is considered as Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. From Bhava to Mahabhava Paryante, from Bhava until Mahabhava, it is considered Siddhi Bhakti. It is perfected Bhakti. But before, until Asakti, it is considered Sadhana Bhakti. That is, one is trying to practice, one is trying to become a devotee, one is training his mind. So once a person really attains a true taste and attachment, then he can try to live in Vrindavan and spontaneously serve Krishna's lotus feet. So, okay, a person has come to this stage. What does he do? That's what we saw in the other side of the slide. One should reside in Vraja. So he was training the mind even when he was a Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakta. How? By following the regulative principles and by chanting and remembering regularly according to the directions given in the scriptures. He was controlling his mind. And then now he has become a Raganuga Sadhana Bhakta. Does he stop controlling his mind? No, he continues to control his mind or train his mind to remember Krishna. How? By residing in Vraja, if not physically, mentally, but for sure mentally. Because if somebody is not mentally residing in Vrindavan, even if they are physically residing in Vrindavan, that's of very little use. Under the shelter of an advanced devotee there. How does this devotee reside in Vrindavan? Under the shelter of an advanced devotee, not just by his own whims. Absorbed in remembrance of Krishna and his associates. What does he do in Vrindavan? Eats chat in Loi Bazar? No. Absorbed in remembrance of Krishna and his associates. He utilizes all his time in remembering Krishna and his associates. That's the purpose that he has gone to Vrindavan and he has taken shelter of an advanced devotee, because this advanced devotee is following the eternal associates of Krishna. Either it is Vatsalya Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, Sakhya Rasa, or Dasya Rasa. He has some like attraction, so he chooses someone and follows in their footsteps. Following in the footsteps of a particular associate and enter under their direct eternal guidance and shelter. That is, be trained in their particular service, emotions. So by hearing certain kind of pastimes and like that. So this method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana and sadhya. That is, we begin as Raganuga sadhana, and when we advance, we go to the level of bhakti, and bhava and prema, which becomes sadhya. That is, prema is the sadhya, is the goal. So that is the understanding in this verse about training the mind during the phase of Vaidhi sadhana and during the phase of Raganuga sadhana. Okay. If any questions come up, please put it up on the chat. We will take it soon. So it's a natural question. I already kind of answered. When can one transition from Vaidhi sadhana to Raganuga sadhana? It's a natural question. And it's being answered by none other than Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who gave a lot of emphasis on this particular topic of who takes up Raganuga sadhana and when they take up and what is their qualification to take it up. So it is one of his primary topics that he discussed a lot during his life. So hearing from him will be very clarifying on this topic. When can one transition from Vaidhi sadhana to Raganuga sadhana? When a devotee following the path of Vaidhi bhakti abandons his many varieties of material desires and performs bhajan in accordance with the instructions of Shastra, Sadguru, not the Sadguru that we all know. It means true Guru and Vaishnavas, ruchi, taste arises in his bhajan. Upon the appearance of this ruchi, he abandons the path of Vaidhi bhakti and enters the path of Raganuga bhakti. So, when a devotee following the path of Vaidhi bhakti, when he actually gives up all material desires and with full focused intelligence performs bhajan in accordance to Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, ruchi arises in his bhajan. Ruchi is taste. It's after the platform of Nishtha. Only in that state, when he achieves that state of ruchi, upon the appearance of this ruchi, then he can go from Vaidhi to Raganuga bhakti. So the natural question is, how will I know that I have the ruchi has arisen? So we have to read the Madhurya Kadambini. It's not at all vague, believe me. It's very, very clearly given about these stages. If anyone thinks, if anyone wants to evaluate themselves, if they are on the platform of Nishtha, or if they ever want to understand what is the platform of Nishtha, the platform of Nishtha is characterized by the absence of the 5 following items that I'm going to say. These 5 items are absent in a devotee who has come to the platform of Nishtha. I'm not speaking about Ruchi, I'm speaking about Nishtha, which is a stage before Ruchi. So the 5 items that are absent in a devotee who's on the platform of Nishtha is lethargy or excessive sleep. He is not lazy, especially in terms of executing devotional activities. He is not lazy. He has no distraction. He has no distraction when he wants to perform devotional activities. He has no indifference while practicing the devotional activities. Indifference means he will not miss. Okay, today I missed my japa. Okay, it's okay, not a problem. No, he will not be indifferent. He will not be indifferent to the rules that are supposed to be followed. He will not be indifferent to those rules which are supposed to be in terms of like things should be done or should not be done. He will be careful in terms of both that needs to be done and that should not be done. And he has no indifference and he has no bad habits. And he has no taste for material enjoyment. So these are the 5 signs of a person who has come to the platform of Nishtha. Even though mode of passion and ignorance might be present, they are ineffective. They don't affect him. Intensity and ease for hearing and chanting and other services. His intensity for chanting and hearing about Krishna and the ease with which he performs those is very phenomenal. He has a great intensity and he has a great ease in trying to chant and hear Krishna's holy names and perform various services. So this is the stage of Nishtha. So after this comes Ruchi, because this person is having steady practice. Because of the steady practice, at one point it gets propelled by its own energy. It picks up energy like momentum. Sometimes you have done a bicycle, I mean by the Indian bicycles, like for a while sometimes they may take a while, but once they pick up the speed, then they have their own momentum. Similarly, the steady service that this devotee is doing, after a while it propels by its own energy, and it really catches up a good momentum. His taste for devotional activities increase. Devotional activities means chanting, hearing, remembering Krishna, like this. The core devotional activities, it is the attraction for those core activities is much more than any other activity that he has to do in this life. So, and in this stage of Ruchi, he is like experiencing great pleasure, taste in terms of hearing and chanting. So the next level is asakti, that is attachment. So there is not much, there is a ruchi and asakti, they both are actually attachment only. Ruchi is attachment to the limbs of devotional service. I like to, or it's not I like to, I have taste in chanting. It's me, not me. I'm just saying this person who's on the stage of ruchi has a real taste for chanting. That means he is attached to the limbs of devotional activities. In the stage of asakti, the attachment grows to Krishna as a person, not just to the process of devotional service. When that attachment to the process of devotional service grows and becomes a direct attachment to Krishna as a person, that is the stage of asakti. So this, all this I said so that one can evaluate easily, at least himself, that what stage he is in, or at least whether he has come to the stage of Nishtha or not. So after Nishtha, Ruchi has to come, and then only a Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakta can actually enter the path of Raganuga Bhakti. Okay. Here, let's go back to Srila Prabhupada's purport, because we only saw some aspects of Prabhupada's purport. Before getting into this aspect of Prabhupada's purport, I want to show something else. Okay. I'm going to refer directly from the book because it seems easier for me. So we saw the first 2 or 3 paragraphs where Prabhupada was speaking about the training the mind, and then Rupa Goswami says, okay, then Prabhupada writes, Srila Rupa Goswami further advises, okay, after training the mind, you come to the stage of Ruchi, Asakti, then go to Brajabhumi. So Srila Rupa Goswami further advises Tishtan Vraje. I'm reading from, I'm not sure if you all have the same edition of the book. I'm reading from page 74, and it's probably the second paragraph towards the end. So Tishtan Vraje, that one should live in Vrindavan, any part of Vrindavan, according to Brajbhumi. So, and then he says, and what does she do? What he or she should do while living in Vrindavan? They should take shelter of an advanced devotee there. We saw this. And in this way, they should always think of Krishna and his pastimes. They should engage fully. So Rupa Goswami, Srila Prabhupada is referring to Rupa Goswami's very important verses in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. These 3 verses, 294, 95, and 296, they actually give the beginning of Raganuga Sadhana and what happens there, like that. Krishnam Smaran Janam Chasya Preshtam Nijasamihitam Tattat Katha Ratas Chaso Kuryad Vasam Vraje Sada Seva Sadhaka Rupena Siddha Rupena Chatrahi Tad Bhava Lipsuna Karya Vraja Lokanu Sarata. So Krishnam Smaran, what that person should do? Krishnam Smaran, what does Krishnam Smaran means? Remember Krishna. Does just Krishna? No, Janam Chasya. We have to remember the associates of Krishna also. Preshtam Nija Samihitam, because those associates are Preshtam, very dear to Krishna, very close to Krishna. Krishnam Smaran Janam Chasya Preshtam Nija Samihitam. How? Tattat Kataratas Chaso, by hearing about them, by hearing about Krishna, by hearing about these eternal associates, the pastimes, all these things. Kuryadvasam Vraje Sada. Please stay in the realm of Vrindavan, Vraja, always. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Vraja and always engage in Krishnam Smaran Janam Chasya Preshtam. That is, one should remember Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. By following in the footsteps of such associates and by entering under their eternal guidance, what happens? Because if he has just come to the stage of Ruchi, he has not yet achieved Bhava, he has not yet achieved Prema. So he is just beginning Raganuga Bhakti. What is the qualification to begin Raganuga Bhakti? Or in the initial stages of Raganuga Bhakti, what is happening? A greed develops. A greed to be like those eternal associates of Krishna. So when a person actually follows in the footsteps of eternal associates and takes shelter of them and takes their guidance, what happens is he can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That lobha, that intense greed, that intense desire, or called as greed, is the qualification for actually achieving the platform of bhava and prema. So that is why, by taking, after coming to the stage of ruchi, going to Vrindavan, meditating on Krishna under the guidance of eternal associates, one develops an internal intense desire. Through that intense desire, everything will manifest. So further, Srila Rupa Goswami writes, as I said, chanted the verse earlier, in the transcendental realm of Braja, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates, and one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and should follow in his footsteps. We saw this in the previous verse also. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana and in the stage of sadhya. So this itself is like a whole class. What is Siddha Rupena and Sadhaka Rupena? In short, to be very relevant, to stay relevant to this discussion, Siddha Rupena and Sadhaka Rupena can mean multiple things. But for sure, it means that when a person is in the stage of like while living in the external body, he doesn't dress like a gopi. Oh, I have the interest to be a gopi, so I dress like gopi, I act like gopi. No, not that. It is not that kind of a siddha rupa or sadhaka rupa they are saying. Sadhaka seva sadhaka rupena means how Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, they are all eternally gopis and manjaris. What did they do when they lived in Vrindavan? Did they wear sari and go roam around? No. They actually was chanting the holy names incessantly, excavating places, offering obeisances to various Vaishnavas, and completely controlling their senses. They were Goswamis. They were not engaging like they were not dressing like gopis and then having illicit affair with other people. No, they were not doing those things. So they all showed us what to do in the platform of sadhaka. Even though they are actually the gopis and manjaris serving Krishna in the spiritual realm, in their own sadhaka rupa, in their own manifested body here, they showed us what to do while on the platform of a sadhaka. So they personally chanted. They chanted a particular numbers, fixed numbers. They studied scriptures. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Vinipuno Sadharma Samstapako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo Srijiva Gopalako. So Srinivas Acharya says, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno. They very, very intensely and elaborately studied all kinds of scriptures. Various scriptures to actually bring Sadharma Samstapaka to in order to establish the highest dharma. They studied all kinds of scriptures and took the essence and established the Sadharma, the highest dharma. So they were studying, they were chanting, they were offering obeisances. Raghunath Das Goswami was offering obeisance every day in a particular number. It's not like he was saying Vansha Kalpataru Vaishya. Means like people show like Vansha. Means that is the Dandavat. So no, he was physically offering obeisances to so many Vaishnavas and worshipping deities and writing books. So this is what is the service one does when he is, even though he is on the Raganuga sadhana, externally he practices these principles of given by the scriptures. There may be certain principles that he may give up, but according to his mood, say if he is wanting to be a Vrajagopi, he may not meditate on Mathura pastimes, or he may not meditate on Dwaraka's queens. That is something he may give up, even though the scripture may say you have to worship Krishna in this way. But they don't actually engage in illicit sex or meat eating or gambling or intoxication. No, they don't give up scriptural regulations in terms of those regulations. Generally, neophyte devotees, as soon as say in the Raganuga's platform, there is no rules and regulations. There is no control of scriptures. They say, oh, okay, finally, I'm free from the four regulative principles. Finally, I have some escape route here. No, these people actually cannot. They have come to a stage of practice that whatever they think is according to the scriptures, and there is no place for material enjoyment or sinful tendencies in their hearts because they have crossed the stage of asakti. That's why I explain, even though it wasn't directly related to the discussion, I listed the symptoms of nishta, ruchi, and asakti. Because if a person has crossed this stage, he has no attachment to enjoy material things like illicit sex or meat or gambling or intoxication in his heart. There is no inclination. So that is why after the stage of asakti, one is supposed to get into the platform of Raganuga sadhana. So here also, Prabhupada says this method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, that is Raganuga sadhana, and in the stage of sadhya, when one is a Siddha Purush or a spiritually perfected soul. We should also show our gratitude while reading this to Srila Prabhupada, because even though we are not like cross the stage of asakti, Srila Prabhupada created facilities for devotees to come and live in Vrindavan and Mayapur. These are the holy places. Prabhupada created facilities for devotees to come and live in Vrindavan and Mayapur and execute devotional service there. In even though they all may not have come to the stage beyond asakti, because that is Srila Prabhupada's mercy and accommodation of conditioned souls, that we can go there, but we have to really be careful when we are there. Then we can advance quickly to that stage. But if we are careless, then it can also create troubles. But it's a mercifully is allowing. That's why he is saying this method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, spiritual practices executed while in the stage of bondage. It's possible. General devotees who haven't crossed the stage of attachment can also go live in Vrindavan under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada and practice the principles he gave. If they practice, then also they can come to this stage of asakti. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in a matter of few lines, just nails the whole thing. Whatever I was trying to say for such long time, in a matter of 10 lines, he just nails the whole thing. So let's read it verbatim. It's so powerful. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, qualities, and pastimes, and so forth. So this is the stage of Vaidhi sadhana. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, that is coming to the platform of Ruchi and Asakti, then one should try to live in Vrindavan, pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of devotional service. As simple as that. So it's very clear. One has to practice Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, come to the stage of Ruchi and Asakti. Then he can transition to Raganuga sadhana by residing in Vrindavan specifically, because everybody can go and have an apartment in Vrindavan, reside in Vrindavan even before the stage of Asakti. But here this residence in Vrindavan is very intentful. Why is he going to reside? Because he has agreed to be like the eternal associates of Krishna. He wants a guidance. He wants to advance. His greed is along. It's not that, okay, I am in Vrindavan and I am just relaxing there. No, this person's greed is that Kalam Nayed Akhilam iti Upadeshamrita. Kalam Nayed. He has to utilize his 24 hours in engaging in Krishna service. So his residence is mental and physical. It's not just physical. So in this course of discussing at this point of time, Srila Prabhupada actually refers from the Anusvritti commentary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a concept called progressive stages of remembrance. So in itself is a separate concept. It in the flow of discussing Vaidhi, transition from Vaidhi to Sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana to Raganuga sadhana, and the details of practicing Raganuga sadhana, Srila Prabhupada is recounting this from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purport. So it is technical, but it is quite simple. I'll try my best to explain to you in a theoretical way, because it's quite theoretical for me, because I don't have the grasp of all these stages. However, whatever is presented, we will try to see it in a systematic way so that we understand. And it's been very helpful for me to even like just trying to prepare for this class, because it sets the goal of our life very clear. Goal of life is not this, goal of life is not that, goal of is not life is this. There's sometimes like it's not that we are confused, but our heart gets overwhelmed with so many other goals in life. So we may be engaged in life and have various things to achieve in the course of our lives, but our goal, what is our goal, is being given clearly in these scriptures by our acharyas. So reading this section has been extremely nourishing for me also personally. So let's discuss this particular concept of progressive stages of remembrance. I'm going to read from Srila Prabhupada and show how I have accommodated it in this chart, because some adjustments have been done, some other books have been referred also. So I'm going to read from Prabhupada and show you where and how I have accommodated it in this chart. So the whole section is progressive stages of remembrance. There are 5 stages of remembrance. It's on the top: Shravana Dasha, Varana Dasha, Smara Dasha, Apana Dasha, and Sampatti Dasha. Dasha means situation. Dasha is a situation, you could say. In astrology also they would say this planet is in this dasha, this planet is in this dasha, or our stars are in this dasha, something like that. It's a situation. So it's not das, it's not a servant. It is dasha. It is a phase. It is a stage. It is a situation. So it is the first stage is called as Shravana Dasha. So Shravan, we all know, Shravan means hearing. So the first, everything begins with Adav, means everything begins with hearing. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. The first limb of devotional service is actually hearing from Sri Guru. So under the shelter of Guru, one listens to him. So that is the stage of hearing. So let's read Srila Prabhupada. In the neophyte stage, that means this person has not crossed the stage, is practicing Vaidhi sadhana, is not yet crossed the stage of asakti. So that is why Prabhupada begins with, in the neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. So it's a advice to all the practitioners of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, that they should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. So this, and that is called as Shravana Dasha, the stage of hearing. So the what we need to do in this stage, constant hearing of Krishna Katha. What happens in this stage? I have referred from another place. This is from Jaiva Dharma of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. The development of greed for hearing more about Krishna, because one really engages himself in Krishna Katha nicely. So by the purification of the heart, he wants to hear more. The development of greed for hearing more about Krishna, because the greed is what will take him from Vaidhi to Raganuga. So that greed for hearing comes. It's a specific kind of greed. I want to hear more about Krishna. I want to know more about Krishna. I want to know more about the pastimes of Krishna. I want to listen to the Krishna's holy names more. It's being told in the scriptures. It's so amazing. All these devotees are chanting so nicely. Let me hear Krishna's name, really wanting to hear Krishna's name and Krishna's pastimes. That greed develops first. It's not for Krishna, it's for the limb of devotional service. Inclination to perform Raganuga bhajan appears in the heart of the listener, because he also understands the stages. He also understands, okay, I also should perform Raganuga bhajan in the future. So there is an inclination that he's not indifferent. Who cares? As long as I get my prasad, as long as I somehow rotate my malas, and people identify me as a devotee, who cares? Who worries about all these Raganuga? Who even knows all these things? So that indifference is not there. He actually, okay, today or tomorrow I have to go there. That is the goal of life. That clarity is there. That he develops by continuously hearing Krishna Katha. One's mind is fully attracted to Krishna Leela and develops intense eagerness to enter into it. So first he wanted to hear more about Krishna. Then because of hearing more about Krishna, he also wanted to practice Raganuga bhajan, and he is continuing to hear more about Krishna. So now he's hearing so much about Krishna and his associates. He wants to be actually part of such a perfected state. So he has that desire. Actually, his mind is fully attracted. He wants it. That is the goal of life. His goal is not achieving any kind of mundane piety or mundane name or fame. His attraction, a heartfelt attraction. It's not an intellectual understanding. If you ask me, I'll tell you the right thing, but I may not believe it in my heart. I may not live by it, but I may tell you the right thing because I have been hearing it from Srila Prabhupada. But here is a person whose heart says it. So that is where he has come. So when he has come to this stage, so then he actually takes shelter of his guru. He has already taken shelter of his guru, but now he reveals his heart. His guru also can see this person has come to a certain stage. So he gets the blessings of the guru to actually transition from Vaidhi to Raganuga. So the next stage is called as Varana Dasha. Let's read Srila Prabhupada. By constantly hearing the transcendental holy name of Krishna and hearing of his transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes, one can attain to the stage of acceptance called Varanadasha. So, because of continuously hearing the name, form, qualities, and pastimes, this person has developed a intense desire. So, due to that intense desire, he is coming to the stage of Varanadasha, stage of acceptance. What acceptance? What is that acceptance? Stage of, we know stage of hearing, that means it's where you are hearing. What do you mean by stage of acceptance? This sounds very vague. What is he accepting? He is accepting Raganuga sadhana. He has accepted the path of Raganuga. So that is the stage. First he has accepted, okay, now I have achieved the stage of Ashakti, so I consciously transition from Vaidhi sadhana to Raganuga sadhana. That acceptance of the path of Raganuga is this stage of Varanadasha. What does he do? He's been hearing so much. He's going to chant now. He is, because he has heard so much, it's coming out of him naturally. Stage of chanting. What is the stage of chanting? Is Shuddhanam. He is already chanting pure holy name. No offenses, no distraction. Because I already clarified, in the stage of Nishta only, there is all distraction and indifference is removed. So he has no distraction, he has no indifference, he has no attraction to material enjoyment. So his holy name is pure chanting. His stage of chanting is pure. That is, this Varana Dasha is stage of chanting. In terms of technicality, in terms of the stages of bhakti, he is transitioning from Vaidhi and accepting Raganuga. That is why it is called a stage of acceptance. So Prabhupada writes, when one attains this stage, Varana Dasha, the stage of acceptance, what does he do? He becomes attached to hearing of Krishna Katha. When one is able to chant in ecstasy, and he actually attains the stage of Smarana Avastha, that is, because he has been hearing, his hearing only became more intense. His chanting has become chant in ecstasy. He is having ecstasy, not bhava. He has not yet come there completely. This ecstasy is a kind of he is having more intensity, I would say. So he begins performing kirtan of those topics he was hearing and performs kirtan with specific devotional mood. He also has some attraction to certain kind of mood. Mood means either he wants to be a gopi or a gopa or a peacock, whatever he wants to be in Vrindavan in service of Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna. It's a natural thing. Now, if you ask me, oh, how will I know? How does he know? You have to go beyond the stage of asakti. It will naturally come. It's like growing up. When we are young, we don't know about sexual attraction. As person grows up, it naturally comes from inside. All the previously stored impressions. Similarly, all our other impressions, the spiritual impressions also will come as we cleanse our heart. So take shelter of the Guru with humility and begs for the service of divine couple. So he really understands that without the mercy of Guru, I cannot actually achieve the service of divine couple. So and the Guru also understands this person has developed a real, honest, intense greed for becoming a servant of Krishna in the eternal Leela. So he also assures him, yes, it is possible. And he also instructs him to continue his chanting. And he says, start remembrance also. So that is when he comes from the stage, because he is chanting in the stage like so nicely. So he moves to the stage of remembrance. So now he is going to recollect. But this stage of remembrance, Smarana Dasha, is a very crucial stage because this person has taken up Raganuga sadhana but has not yet achieved bhava. So this is the stage. By going through the Smarana Dasha nicely, he will achieve the stage of bhava. So this particular Smarana Dasha is a long and has many details. It has 5 stages within itself. So I could not accommodate the 5 in a straight line within the screen. So I have cut into 3 plus 2. I have positioned next to it. The first stage is Smarana. What is Smarana? Remembering. Dharana, we will see what it is. That is absorption. Dhyana is meditation. Anusmriti is constant remembrance. And Samadhi is trance. So Srila Prabhupada also explains all of these terms. Well, let's see that. So Prabhupada said, when one is able to chant in ecstasy, that is Varana Dasha, he attains the stage of Smarana Avastha. You can either call it Smarana Dasha or you can call it Smarana Avastha. Avastha is also the same meaning, situation. The stage of remembering. So first we saw stage of hearing, next we saw stage of chanting, now we are seeing stage of remembering. So there are 5 items of progressive Krishna Smaran. Prabhupada states them in English. So please try to remember the Sanskrit name and the English name. That's all I can say. It will be helpful for you when you give your test. Recollection, absorption, meditation, constant remembrance, and trance. So we will see each one of these 5 items of progressive Krishna Smaran. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals. What do you call it? It's a recollection. I'm thinking something, I recollect. That means I was thinking of something else. It was my thinking about that particular object was not continuous. I was thinking something else. Suddenly I recollected this thing also. So my smarana, my remembrance of Krishna, one's remembrance of Krishna in this stage is actually interrupted by various other things. So that is why it is called as generic smarana, general remembrance or recollection. So meditation where the mind sometimes becomes distracted is called smarana, sometimes becomes distracted. The next stage is called as dharana, that is absorption. When that particular recollection becomes devoid of any distraction, there is more or I would say that less interruption or no interruption. So there is absorption now. So that stage is called as dharana. When that absorption becomes unbroken contemplation upon the object of meditation, it becomes dhyana. Even in Ashtanga Yoga also these stages there, dharana and dhyana. So here it is, the same terms are used. Srila Prabhupada writes, at first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals, but later remembrance proceeds uninterrupted, that is dharana. When remembrance is uninterrupted, it becomes concentrated, that is dhyana, and is called meditation, or as I said in Sanskrit, it's called dhyana. So recollection, absorption, and meditation. There is interrupted at intervals, it becomes uninterrupted, and it becomes concentrated. That's when it is called as meditation. Then the 4th stage is by uninterrupted, when meditation expands, because it's a generic meditation, but now anusmriti means that this person is able to focus on the details also. Expands, the meditation expands. The scene, actually you can say, you see a painting, you see some details, but there are, now you see a lot more details, a lot more clarity, a lot more involvement. So anusmriti is, the meditation expands and becomes constant. It is called anusmriti. Because earlier in the stage, there may be some details revealed, but those details may not stay long. The meditation may be long, but the details may not stay for long. But now the meditation has expanded, and it is also constant. And when a person continues in the stage of anusmriti, by uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one enters the stage of samadhi or spiritual trance. So at the stage of samadhi, this person perfects the smarana dasha. When a person comes from varana to smarana dasha, he starts with smaran, goes to dharana, then dhyana, anusmriti, samadhi. When he comes to the state of samadhi, trance, he has perfected the stage of smarana dasha and actually goes to the stage of apana dasha. So we will see that after smarana dasha, that because this person has achieved samadhi, he is crossing that stage. After smarana dasha or samadhi has fully developed, the soul comes to understand his original constitutional position. Prabhupada has not given the Sanskrit name for this particular stage. He is achieving his original constitutional position. He has not mentioned the Sanskrit name for that. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions it. That is called as Apanadasha. The stage where this person has achieved something. What has he achieved? He has achieved the constitutional position. He has come to understand. So apana means possessing something. What is he possessing? He is possessing actually the constitution. He has come to know the constitutional position. And this is the stage of spiritual ecstasy also. That's why sometimes in some books it is called as bhavapanadasha. Some books it is called as apanadasha. Bhavapanadasha means in the stage of acquiring bhava, that is spiritual ecstasy, or other books call it as Apanadasha, means stage of accepting the spiritual constitutional position. So he understands his original constitutional position. So after Smarana Dasha, I am referring to the map on the screen. After reading the point under Apanadasha, the fourth stage, after Smarana Dasha, one enters the stage known as Apanadasha. Means only when completes the previous stage successfully until Samadhi trance, he comes to this stage. In this stage, when he comes here, the sadhaka achieves realization of his pure spiritual identity and he attains Swarupa Siddhi. That Swarupa Siddhi is what he achieves. That is what is called as Apanadasha. After he achieves Swarupa Siddhi, Prabhupada writes, at that time, when he achieves, when he knows his original constitutional position, at that time, he can perfectly and clearly understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. That is called Sampatti Dasha, or the perfection of life. So then whatever is remaining in terms of understanding in him for knowing his complete relationship with Krishna, that is achieved in the last stage of Sampatti Dasha, that is the stage of attaining Prema. He attains Vastu Siddhi. In technical, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions that in Apana Dasha he achieves Swarupa Siddhi, in Sampatti Dasha he achieves Vastu Siddhi. What is Vastu Siddhi? Means his complete eternal relationship with Krishna. What is the difference between original constitutional position and eternal relationship? I am not very clear, to be very honest. But in terms of technical terms, this is called as Swarupa Siddhi, that is called as Vastu Siddhi. At this time, he finally obtains a spiritual form. In the stage of, when he says he attains Swarupa Siddhi, he knows who he is, but he actually achieves that form in the last stage. That is Vastu Siddhi. Even though the technicalities of that I don't know, but in broad perspective, broader terms, in Swarupa Siddhi, he comes to know who he is, but he actually achieves that form, that spiritual form, and is appointed to his eternal service in the spiritual realm. He is also having a Siddha Deha, and he is executing his duties in the pastimes of the Lord. So these are the stages. Little far out, but that's what is being explained here by Srila Prabhupada. Wherever there were few things not missing, he had put it in English, and some things the Sanskrit term was missing. I took it from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purport. So this is the whole thing. I'm going to repeat. Bear with me. I don't know what's the time. It's 3. There are 5 stages in terms of remembrance. The first stage, Shravana Dasa, comes under Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And in this stage, a person does hearing. He continuously hears and he comes to the stage of Ruchi and Asakti. So then he moves to the stage of Varana Dasha, where he accepts Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So he comes from Vaidhi to Raganuga. So Shravana Dasha, the first stage, falls under Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and the rest of the stages actually fall under Raganuga. So in Varana Dasha, he performs chanting. So when he chants with ecstasy, in the sense of his chanting is pure and complete, he goes to the third stage, that is Smarana Dasha. So the stage of remembrance, 5 stages of remembrance are given. One is, the first stage is a generic remembrance or recollection, because it is distracted sometimes, and when that distraction is reduced and recollection becomes uninterrupted, it becomes absorption. And when that absorption is actually unbroken, then it becomes meditation. When that meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called as anusmriti or constant remembrance. And in the stage of constant remembrance, when he continues to practice, he achieves samadhi. After the state of samadhi or trance, one achieves actually bhava, which is spiritual ecstasy, where he transitions to the next stage, apanadasha. And from there, when he achieves swarupa siddhi, he continues to practice. Because in this stage, it is not according to rules. It's just they cannot but chant about Krishna. They cannot but think of Krishna, because that is called anubhav in that particular stage. It's natural, it's spontaneous. There is no, okay, did you chant 16 rounds? What are you doing now? So there is no rules monitoring them. It's just they can't but think of Krishna or chant about Krishna or serve Krishna. So when that continues, the person actually achieves his original form and the Vastu Siddhi, that means achieving Krishna Prem and the form itself, Vastu Siddhi, he achieves. Then his state is called as Sampati Dasha, and he is the perfected being. In that stage, he is complete. The highest perfection a living entity can achieve is the Sampati Dasha. Starts with Shravan, starts with hearing, and leads up to achieving the law of God. So in these 5 stages. So now we have completed the purport pretty much. There is only one paragraph left. The Chaitanya, I'm going to read and explain. The Chaitanya Charitamrita advises. There is a whole section of Chaitanya Charitamrita which is teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Sanatan Goswami. Madhya Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 22. That has like a whole section of nice collection of verses which where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains to Rupa Goswami about Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti and Ragatmika Bhakti. So that's why that particular section Srila Prabhupada refers here. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita advises those who are neophytes to give up all kinds of motivated desires, the same thing, and simply engage in regulative devotional service of the Lord according to directions of the scripture. I am going through a summary of the whole verse. That's why things are repeated. So if one is a neophyte, practice according to rules and regulations. In this way, a neophyte can gradually develop attachment, asakti. Once he has developed asakti, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna, even without following the regulative principles. That means it's not that he will give up. Even without any force, without any rules and regulations in the forefront of his mind, naturally he serves. This stage is called as Raga Bhakti. So at this stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. So when a person actually achieves asakti, then he can walk the path of Raga Bhakti. But first he starts as Raganuga. When it achieves perfection, he becomes Raga Atmika. So in the Raga Bhakti, what does one person do? He has to follow in the footsteps of eternal associates, not by his own imagination, not by his own concoction. He decides, he chooses one of his favorite rasas and he does whatever he wants. No, he has to actually take guidance there also. Nothing is, he is not independent on his own, by his own whims. So in Raganuga Bhakti can be executed in any of the rasa. Srila Prabhupada explains Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, Madhurya rasa. But there should be an aspiration to be like Krishna's associates and take shelter of a senior advanced devotee and follow in their footsteps. So this is the conclusion of the purport of Srila Prabhupada. I have a few more points that I've collected from different places, so we'll quickly see that and then have a break before we go to the next verse. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja, Goloka Vrindavan, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. If you notice, this is just the translation. I've just emphasized certain things. The advice of Srila Rupa Goswami is offering here is obviously intended for sadhakas. For whom he is advising? He is advising for those people who has not yet come to that stage. Sadhakas who are not who are not only highly elevated in Sadachar and Nama Bhajan, but also in Seva Bhav and Gaudiya Vaishnava culture. All these things are there in a person who has achieved the stage of asakti, not for anybody else. He is only advising. They, from verse 8, the advice is mainly for us to know, but for someone to follow, for whom it is to follow, for those people who are in the stage of asakti. In essence, such a evolved sadhaka has practiced and realized the preceding 7 verses of Sri Upadeshamrita. He has, he has actually practiced and realized the previous 7 verses, not as such a cheap thing. So Srila Prabhupada's translation also indicates that such a sadhaka is not only about bodily consciousness and designation, but also has realization of his swarupa. This is also indicated in the Srila Prabhupada's translation of verse. I'm sorry, this I took from somewhere, so it's a little out of context. This is Srila Prabhupada writing in another book. Don't try to understand the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna with your present senses, but simply chant their holy names. Then when the dust on the mirror of your heart is cleansed, you will understand everything. Everything begins with chanting. Shravana. Shravana Dasa. Hearing and then chanting. You don't have to be very highly educated or be a philosopher, scientist, or a rich man to realize God. If you just sincerely engage your tongue in the service of the Lord, you will realize Him. It's so simple, it's not very difficult. And this is about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He is saying, in the beginning, one has to render service strictly according to regulative principles, because Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is very strict about it. Raganuga sadhana is not for anyone and everyone. If somebody is a beginner, practice strictly according to the regulative principles set forth by the scriptures and spiritual master. When one advances, he will naturally go to the next stage. Sorry that this theme keeps recurring again and again, because that's the thrust of most of the purpose. I don't have to repeat it. And there is this one nice correlation between the Vidhi Marga and Raga Marga. Raga is a healthy state. When I'm unhealthy spiritually, I practice according to rules and regulations. So this particular analogy, I found it very helpful. The relation of Raga with Vidhi is like the relation of the body to medicine. When my body is sick, I take medicine to recuperate my body. So when I'm spiritually sick, my medicine is the rules and regulations given by the scriptures. I take those rules like the medicine very sincerely. Then what happens? My body becomes cured, like my disease disappears. So when the disease disappears, I don't need my medicine here after that. When I become well, I don't need to continue to take my medicines. Similarly, Raga has many functions, but the function of Vidhi is to protect and nourish Raga. So when Raga is thoroughly nourished, it does not depend on Vidhi any longer. Body can naturally do its own things when the health is there. It doesn't depend on medicine to do those same activities. It's not that he's going to, like, say, for example, in the stage of when I'm sick, I'm just lying down. I'm taking medicines, but I'm just lying down. I don't have energy. I'm not going to do the same thing when I become healthy. I neither need the medicines, nor do I need to do the same activities. I'll do whatever is natural in a healthy state. So similarly, the raga is nourished and protected by vidhi when the raga is not fully manifested. But when it is actually fully nourished and manifested, the health is regained. It does not read rules and regulations. It doesn't mean it will go against the scriptural rules and regulations, moral rules and regulations. No, it does not depend on it. The spurti, the what do you call inclination, or no, the what do you call spurti? The inspiration is not because, oh, the scriptures tells me I should not engage in this sinful activity. That's you say as a sadhaka now, okay, I should not do this. It's not right. Because the scripture says this, the gurus are saying it. It's not right. It's a sinful thing. I should not do it. But in the stage of raga, they just naturally don't have any attraction to those things, and they do have naturally think like what is the right thing to do. So the pure raga for the Lord takes shelter of only a pure soul. That means only a person is purified from material contamination, pure raga will manifest. I cannot say, oh, pure raga already manifested in my heart, I don't have to follow any vidhi, any rules. No, it only manifests when the heart is completely liberated from material contamination. Then that pure raga is called as Ragatmika Bhakti. Ragatmika Bhakti is what in the spiritual world associates of Krishna perform. When we want that, and we try here, that is called as Raganuga sadhana. Raga Anuga means there is somebody who has raga, we are following in their footsteps, so we become Raganuga. But in the spiritual world, they are all Ragatmika. Even while being here, Rupa Goswami is a Ragatmika Bhakta. He is not a Raganuga Bhakta. Even while living in this world in a particular form, as Srila Rupa Goswami, he is actually a Ragatmika Bhakta. Raga is not different from his self. Atmika, it's one. So however, when the spiritual greed becomes so, let me read the whole thing. Only pure souls who participate in the Lord's pastimes are qualified for Ragatmika Bhakti. They are participating in the eternal Leela of Krishna. None except the inhabitants of Braja are qualified. When conditioned souls, by hearing the descriptions in the scriptures, develop a desire to follow in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Braja, who offer Ragatmika Bhakti to Krishna, the bhakti that results is called as Raganuga. When a person wants to be like those associates, then what he does is called as Raga Anuga. He follows in their footsteps. The inspiration for this level of bhakti is greed for its objects, not the vidhi. It's not because it's the right thing to do, it's the scripture say. He naturally feels I want this to do. I want this kind of a relationship with Krishna. The vidhi attempts to stimulate the nature of the soul. Initially, okay, don't do this, don't do this, do this. So through those rules, we actually nourish our soul. And however, when the spiritual greed becomes the impetus for following the vidhi, the devotional practice is no longer called as Vaidhi Bhakti, but Raganuga Bhakti. When a person is practicing and not advanced, his inspiration is vidhi and he follows the vidhi. But when a person out of natural inspiration follows the vidhi, not just because the scriptures are telling him, because it is just that's what he wants to do, so then he becomes Raganuga. That means he does not go against the scriptures in his behavior, because in the past many people have exploited this Raganuga sadhana. Many people have exploited this, saying that, oh, there are no rules and regulations in Raganuga sadhana, I'll do whatever I want. That's why this concept is again being verified. That person who develops greed to attain emotional state in which the Ragatmika devotee serve Krishna is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. Who's qualified? Only when a person has a natural greed to be like Krishna's associates. Raganuga Bhakti includes all the same angas as Vaidhi Bhakti. It's the same angas. It's the same chanting one has to do. It's the same remembering of Krishna's pastimes, worshipping the deities. Everything needs to be done. But the devotee of Raganuga Bhakti performs those activities with a spontaneous mood rather than by following the guidelines of Vidhi. He worships deities because he's just naturally attracted to Krishna. But a Vaidhi Sadhaka Bhakta may have to think, oh, I have to get up in the morning, I have to chant these 16 rounds because I told my spiritual master. It's not just because he wants to chant. The conditions of living in the world must necessarily carry out physical, mental, and social activities to maintain his body. So, the Vidhi mentioned in the discussion of Vaidhi Bhakti, which serve to keep the devotee on the path of Bhakti and prevent him from becoming materially contaminated, must also be followed by the practitioners of Raganuga Bhakti. This is being written by Vishnu Chakra Thakur. He's saying the same rules and regulations which govern Vaidhi Bhakti. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating. Those kind of rules, those moral rules, those regulative principles also actually should be followed by the practitioners of Raganuga Bhakti. Krishna, this is a lot. Okay. So when a person actually sadhana bhakta who develops a greed for emotions similar to those of inhabitants of Braja, internally fix themselves as servants of that person. Not externally they try to do some dress like this or dress like that. No, internally fix. And with complete dedication, internally perform service. So that is why called as Siddha Rupena and Sadhaka Rupena. Externally continue with what is according compatible to the current situation of his body or whatever his activities, whatever his guru is engaging. Internally, this person is supposed to engage. So they should practice externally all the angas of Vaidhi Bhakti, chanting. It's not that they give up chanting. After Raganuga Sadhana, I don't chant. I don't need to chant my 16 rounds. I don't need to chant it. No. Continue to externally follow all the angas that are agreeable to their particular cultivation. If that particular Vaidhi Bhakti anga means meditating on Dwarka, but if this person is aspiring for Vrindavan, then he may not do that. That's okay. Some limbs can be missed. because of incompatibility of rasa. But as long as they have not reached the beginning stages of prema, thus they should follow the vidhi that is favorable to their mood. So whatever rules which are all favorable to the mood that he is trying to develop in service of Krishna, he should not give them up, he should follow them. Furthermore, they should serve Krishna and his devotees with faith. They should regularly discuss about Krishna and his devotees. They should live in Vraja. They should or a place where the Lord performed his pastimes. If they cannot do so physically, then they should do so mentally. There should be for sure mental residence in Vrindavan, whether physical is there or not. The causes of Vaidhi Bhakti are the scriptures and the Vaidhi therein that guides the performance of Bhakti. Vidhi means Vaidhi Bhakti means dictated by the rules given in the scriptures. Vidhi in the scriptures. In contrast, the causes of Raganuga Bhakti are Krishna and his devotees. There are no rules. It's just Krishna's pulling the heart of this person. As Vaidhi Bhakti is a reverential form of Prema Bhakti, it is sometimes called Maryada Marg, whereas Prema Bhakti is called as Pushti Marg, in the path of nourishment. They both are Prema Bhakti. They both are pure devotional service, but one is Maryada Marg, the other one is Pushti Marg. Sorry for the repetition because these are all taken from different books, though sometimes by the same authors. Probably this is the last one. Actually, when one follows the Vidhi Marga prompted by greed, that is called as Raganuga Bhakti. And when one follows Vidhi Marga and is prompted by the orders from the revealed scriptures, that is called as Vaidhi or Vidhi Bhakti. When one worships Krishna without following the rules given by the scriptures, then as the Narada Pancharas proves, it is considered to be simply a cause of disturbance. If someone just concocts his own rules and regulations, which sometimes may be borderline or actually immoral, then those kind of concoctions of trying to worship Krishna with their own understanding of what is right, they only create a social disturbances like what the Sahajiyas do.